Sam Darnold, first start back in Giant State, back in MetLife where he had some bad moments. I feel like saw ghosts. I feel like they're going to want to lean on the run game on the road. Lawrence's phone is going off. He agrees as well.
Gotta take my medicine.
I understand. Fair enough.
This is Ghostbuster alert.
Anyway, free Aaron Jones, 0 beers. Love Jones this week. He's the top 15 running back for me.
You can be the DD for Lawrence now. With how many beers he's already put down.
1,000%.
Fantasy Football Pregame with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Well, Lawrence should be calling the authorities because we have to watch another Daniel Jones start under center for the Giants week number 2. Welcome into Fantasy Football Pregame, George Savaricas, and we got the rest of the crew with us, Matthew Berry, Jake Croucher, Lawrence Jackson here. And guys, a lot of storylines to get to week number 2 throughout the show. Of course, FF Pregame, we want you to send us your questions. We're going to have start, sit, inactives coming up later once those drop about a half hour from now.
We answer more questions. You see it right there. We answer more questions than any other pregame show. I know everyone that's on every other pregame show, fantasy otherwise. I do. I've been in the business for a long time. I know them all. And I will tell you, secretly, at bars late at night when you're going out and they're just like, I don't care about the viewers. That's what they say. They say, I don't care. They ask the questions. I don't answer them. I'm different. Lawrence, George, and Jay are different. We care about your questions. We want to get you a win. The rest of them, please, they're just cashing paychecks. They don't care. They mock you at bars late at night. I'm just telling you behind your backs, but not us. We care.
Nice sweater today, Matthew.
Thank you very much. Would you like to feel it? It's soft.
No. Nice shirt from George, too.
Thank you.
Great shirt.
I got to bring it for Sunday night.
Everyone is dressed very well.
I'm about to say, I think everybody dressed up kind of good today.
Okay, we've got to get to Lawrence's question in 1 second. Shirt in 1 second. Let's get to the question out of the gates. Roll the dice.
Pro-X-commenter. All right. I like that.
Fitting with Lawrence's shirt.
Yeah, fantastic.
So we roll the dice Monday night with A.J. Brown. Are you going to sit him for Dobbins, Ford, Montgomery, then play with A.J. Brown or Drake London if he's out? What do we think?
Okay, so for first off, by the way, unbelievable set of choices. So if you missed it over the weekend, A.J. Brown added the injury report, didn't practice on Saturday. He's questionable going into Monday night. So here's what it would do for you, Pro-X-commenter. Absolutely. I think Dobbins, Ford, Montgomery, honestly, I'd play any of them over risking the fact that A.J. Brown may not go Monday night. I would play any and all of them. I have Dobbins ranked the highest of those running backs, so that's who I would go there with. And then also, I think Drake London is a terrific pivot if for some reason A.J. Brown is out. But what I will say is that if you don't have the plethora of options that Pro-X-commenter does, what I might say here, guys, is just make sure you have a pivot. Seems like a really dumb thing, but I can't tell you how many leagues I see this happen. Make sure A.J. Brown is in your flex position, not in your wide receiver. And then if he can't go Monday night, make sure you have the option to pivot, whether it's a free agent in your league or ideally you pick him up because you may not be able to drop somebody off your bench. Depends on what platform you play on. If you're not on Yahoo, a lot of platforms lock even bench guys after the games play. But what I'll say here is that I would rank them in terms of the pivots: Darnell Mooney, Jahan Dotson, and then I think potentially one of the maybe Tyler Allgeier's out there, Ray McLeod for the Falcons as well.
Zach Ertz? No,
I know Zach Ertz is on the Commanders, but
screwed up my tight ends.
Maybe whatever. Maybe Will Shipley. Maybe Will Shipley gets a little something there, but obviously none of the likely available options in your league are ideal. Dotson and Mooney would be the two best options, but hopefully, I will say this. I don't know how you guys feel. I'm personally probably not going to risk it. If I have a viable option, like Pro-X-commenter does, if I have a viable option that I can play today instead of risk rolling the dice with A.J. Brown on Monday night, I'm doing that because I think there's a chance he doesn't play. I think there's a chance even if he does play, he's limited. I think there's a chance the Eagles blow out the Falcons. Sorry, Lawrence, but your Falcons look awful. And Kirk Cousins looks immovable.
Do you think I'm going to disagree here? That's the bigger question.
I don't, but I'm just saying, I think there's a chance that game script that they're we don't, AJ, take the second half off. We don't need you because we're up big because Kirk has thrown another pick and, Saquon's running wild and I don't know if anyone here on the desk disagrees, but I personally would. It sucks, but if you don't have a viable pivot, but you do have a decent option to play today, that's what I would do.
And we saw this week 1 where a lot of people thought McCaffrey would play. They were then exposed on Monday night because they had no other option, and people getting either eliminated in guillotine leagues or taking that out week number 1, which leads right into our storylines for week number 2, Matthew. And went from, questionable week 1 to now we're not going to see him till, mid-October with McCaffrey?
He goes officially on the IR, which means he is definitely missing the next 4 games. It's not retroactive. I saw that question on Twitter. No, it's moving forward. So he is officially out for the next 4 games. It might be even longer as well. And that's my storyline. This is the massive story because it's not just, obviously, the number 1 player, the number 1 consensus pick in fantasy football is going to miss the first 5 weeks of the season. But all the talk in the preseason was he's fine. If there's a playoff game, he could go. He's going to be fine. Yeah. Kyle Shanahan, any concerns? No concerns. Chris McCaffrey, I'm getting ready to play. Very questionable reporting, I'm just going to say.
Big time.
Very questionable reporting.
At best,
from all,
questionable.
At best, questionable. From the beat reporters that cover it, from the national reporters or national reporters that have good relationships. I don't know. But it's a whole other conversation. This is a better conversation for Pro Football Talk, and hopefully they dive into it on Monday. But there are massive, NFL implications, gambling implications. If you knew in the preseason you're betting on a 49ers future, if you knew McCaffrey was going to miss 5 games, that moves the line, right, Jay?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was the second favorite for Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, this is Christian McCaffrey. We talk all the time about how there's this idea that running backs don't matter. Running backs matter, but McCaffrey matters more than any of them. He's the most valuable running back in the league. He moved the line a half point when he got ruled out, surprisingly, for Monday Night Football. So, yeah, it's a massive deal. I mean, in terms of what injuries should be declared or not, the NFL probably declares more injuries than any other sport in America. Matthew Tkachuk in the NHL can fracture his sternum and he's questionable with a lower body injury. It's a bit all over the place, but yeah, it is strange, the sequence of events, how we've wound up here.
Well, and there's a game of cat and mouse that coaches will play, but usually it's a guy is questionable and might miss the week, and not a questionable to IR. And it's a multi-billion-dollar business with the NFL and gambling, and the sports books have to be able to trust the injury information. And for fantasy football players, I mean, that was a wild 180 to have McCaffrey go saying in the locker room, my mindset is I'm going to play, to now, sayonara, we'll see you week 6 at best.
And it might be even longer. So throughout the show, we're going to talk about what to do if you have McCaffrey and you don't have Jordan Mason. We're going to talk about some options to replace him not only today, but for the next 5 weeks, and if it's potentially longer. But just in terms of our storylines today, I think that's the biggest storyline is, can Jordan Mason continue the success he had week 1 against the Jets? He's my number 8 running back today. And will we see Isaac Guerendo or anyone else in that Niners backfield emerge? Like Jordan Mason, I believe, I don't have the stats in front of me, but off the tape, I believe he carried the ball 74 times on Monday night. So will anyone else get to touch the ball in the Niners backfield? Now that they know that they're going to miss him for 4 weeks, is there somebody else? Guerendo's sort of the interesting guy to me there. The talented rookie, but it'd be interesting to see just how that backfield shakes out if they want to get anyone else some more reps other than Jordan Mason. All right, Sean writes in here, I can get, I assume, Jordan Mason and Tank Dell for Devontae Adams and Marshawn Lloyd. I assume this is a dynasty league, but I would do, yes or no, hope you had a good day off. Thank you, Sean. I did have a great day off, and I would do that deal in a heartbeat.
How about I say?
In a New York second.
Yeah.
Yes.
Redraft
I would do that
too.
in either league, any kind of league.
There's a chance that Tank Dell's just better than Devontae Adams.
1,000%.
Well,
And Jordan Mason or Marshawn Lloyd,
His quarterback
yes.
certainly is.
I'll tell you this. I would do that deal if you replaced Marshawn Lloyd with Josh Jacobs. That's like, Jordan Mason is a top 10 running back for the next 4 weeks and possibly longer.
I would also say, that 5th week that McCaffrey could miss, that's a Thursday night game on artificial turf in Seattle. So I think there's a very good chance that he is actually out for 5 weeks, not 4.
Yeah.
And could be
Do
out
it,
beyond that.
Sean.
You
Do
don't
the
know.
trade. Do the trade.
Do the trade, Sean. 100%.
In a heartbeat. What's
In
your
a
headline?
heartbeat.
Okay, I'm going to try to bounce back from my Zach Ertz comment, which is a tough way to start the show. It's Judgment Day.
You fumbled your first carry.
I blurted out the name of a former Philadelphia Eagle tight end. It's Judgment Day for Daniel Jones and the Giants offense. They're 1.5-point dogs against the Commanders, which is a disgrace in itself. That you're a 1.5-point dog against the Washington Commanders in 2024, the year of our Lord. It's unbelievable. I do actually think the Giants will win. But it's not just win the game. Like, if they win the game 19-16, that's a failure. This Commanders secondary is terrible. So Baker Mayfield was made to look like peak Joe Montana last week against this secondary. Yeah. So Daniel Jones, he has to play well. He needs to establish a connection with the Malik neighbors. They need to go off. They need to score 25-plus points and win the game. And if they don't, like we've seen past 2 years with these injury guarantees, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, their seasons being cut short. Who's the number one candidate for that this year? They might do that to Daniel Jones in week 3 if he doesn't perform today. So big game for the Giants.
I will just say very quickly that if you are in a super flex league where, like, if you're in a league like the League of Assholes, where like everyone where Malik Willis is rostered, if you're in a league like that, I do think Drew Lock is an interesting stash. Again, if you're in a deep 2-quarterback or super flex league where quarterbacks are scarce, Drew Lock and also Michael Penix. Those are two guys that I would stash if you're desperate for quarterback, because I think there's a chance we see both sooner rather than later.
More upside, Penix or Lock?
Penix, better weapon. Penix, better weapons. We've seen Drew Lock play.
I'd rather have
Hasn't
Lock.
been pretty.
I'd rather have Lock in a nutshell, because I think it's much more likely he gets in.
That I agree with as well. Yes, but and you're asking me more upside. More better floor is Lock, because I agree with Jay that there's a better chance we see Lock sooner than Penix, but more upside is Penix. Like, he could, I think the most, as Connor Rogers always says, the most pro-ready quarterback that came out of college last year, and obviously he's got a plethora of weapons.
Yeah, and he would actually, get the ball to them, and
yes,
not the other team. My storyline is a guy who, it's not Judgment Day for him, but he will be getting judged today on his performance. Can Justin Fields hold on to this starting quarterback spot for the Pittsburgh Steelers? He's got another shot today. Last week he played okay. From a fantasy perspective, he didn't get in the end zone, so the points aren't there. They were able to move the ball. And just going forward, like, if you know Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback for the Steelers, two things he'll be able to keep a receiver fantasy relevant, and George Pickens, he'll be able to keep the tight end relevant, Pat Freiermuth, because he did that back in the day with Cole Kmet. What won't happen is a lot of pass receptions for the running back, whereas if it is a Russell Wilson, you have a better chance of that. So he's got a chance to go on the road and go up against a Denver team that had a pretty bad loss last week. So let's see what old Justin Fields do.
All right, let's see if he can keep it rolling. Maybe hold on to that starting job beyond week number 2. But his week 1 was a pedestrian effort, at least turnover free. To your point, my storyline, and Justin Fields fits right in that, just how awful the quarterback play was league-wide in week number 1. The average yards passing per quarterback under 200 yards, passing touchdowns total for the league were 35. That was the lowest number we've seen in more than a decade. There are only 2 quarterbacks that went over 300 yards. If you look at 2019, 13 quarterbacks went over 300 yards in week number 1. So since they eliminated that 4th preseason game, and I don't think any fan cares that much about the preseason, nor were they that concerned over the elimination of a preseason game, but we've seen how slow it is for these offenses to get in rhythm, and how the offenses look week 1 and 2 is so different than how they look weeks 10 through 12 and later in the season. So it's this week going to be the week where they flip the switch and start looking like the offenses we're accustomed to, or is there going to be this league-wide malaise where it's still kind of run predominant into week number 2, and a lot of these passing yardage unders are what hit for teams around the league? So that's my big concern, and that leads right in to our burning questions. And you're a company man, we're all company men here on the desk. You got to love I'm closest to the fire here.
Why is Lawrence so angry?
Week 2 still
so
me
angry.
mugging.
Is it because you don't have a seat?
Why
does Lawrence have to stand and the rest of us are all comfortable on logs?
So we got our Sunday night game. It's my Bears going to H-Town to take on the Houston Texans. Texans favored by 6.5. The over-under 45.5. So with the poor quarterback play in mind, and we're looking at our ranks here, are you benching Caleb Williams after an ugly week number 1?
Obviously. I'm a QB 17. He looked terrible. I mean, he did not look good. He was harassed all day. And I think there's an argument to be made that Houston's defense is as good as Tennessee's. On the road, by the way, in prime time, that's tough. 17.2% of his passes were off target last week. That was the third highest rate in week number 1. He had a 55.7 passer rating. He scored just 7 fantasy points. He didn't get you much with his legs. Oh, by the way, the way it's trending right now, Keenan Allen's not going to play, or if he does play, he'll be very limited. Rome Odunze missed most of practice this week. He'll play, but he might be limited. So you've got Caleb Williams coming off a game where he looked awful on the road against a playoff defense from last year with potentially 2 of his top 3 receiving targets out of the game. And no, thank you. No. I'm not starting him. He's QB7. I mean, I guess if 16 other quarterbacks are not available to me, then yes, I suppose I am. But yes, in a standard redraft league, in a standard 12 or 14 team league, hopefully I've got somebody better in a single quarterback league.
Yep. George, you're a diehard Bears fan, as evidenced by your kind of Italian deli-themed Bears shirt.
It's a
here.
refrigerator Perry.
Perry, back when the Bears
I'm
were
just talking
good.
about the color scheme. It's very Italia.
And I'm
George,
glad.
can you or can you not actually do the Super Bowl shuffle?
Let's wait for how many beers, and then that will help
right.
improve my dancing.
Understood.
Most
Fair enough.
white men were not that rhythmic until we've had a few cocktails. So
Fair enough.
We'll have to wait till later in the show. When it comes to Caleb Williams, I'm glad you didn't bring up League of Assholes because I am starting him as my second
Well, you
quarterback.
have to in this league.
But
you
it's
gotta
either
do
him
it.
or Gardner Minshew. So either way, you're
Minshew against the Ravens, not great.
kind of holding your nose. But if you're in a single quarterback league, it's hard to trust Caleb. You need to see it with Caleb Williams. He hasn't broke 100 yards yet in the NFL, which is shocking. He went, but he's so good. Like, you know it's going to happen.
Sure.
It's just concerning
It was-
Sunday night on the road.
First game, like you said, how many quarterbacks threw under 300 yards week 1? It was.
Yeah,
but I mean,
except for 2.
93 is
His
low.
passing prop is 221 on DraftKings.
Right. So he hasn't thrown. He didn't throw for 100 yards the first game. I would say that he throws for 200 yards tonight against the Texans. But starting him, that's tough to do when you got 2 of the 3 top receivers on your team banged up. And I think that, like, when you talk about who you even trust on this offense starting in fantasy, when you think about all the receivers, you would say, all right, maybe DJ Moore, but I think it might be DeAndre Swift. He'll at least get the most opportunities in that offense.
Yep, I agree with that. Also, going away from the Bears, I think you're a bit low on Joe Mixon, Matthew. I think Joe Mixon is a top 5 running back in this game and this offense against the Bears. Run defense that didn't look very good against Tennessee. Tony Pollard went off. I think Mixon is kind of being slept on. I think there aren't many running backs I would take over Mixon. This might be the last chance to trade for him in leagues.
Yeah, Pollard had 13 for 82. Mixon's line has shifted almost 4 yards since the beginning of the week. His rushing prop to where it currently is.
Yeah, it's like 70 right now. Colts last week played a ton of zone against the Texans because, and this is what we talked about all preseason about why we thought Mixon was being slept on as a sleeper and that he's snoozy. But the fact is that teams are going to sit there. If you're a defensive coordinator, like, just think logically. Okay, I can either try to, like, play zone and play back or play 2 high safety or whatever because I got to deal with Diggs, Dell, and Nico Collins. Or I can load the box and try to save, it's like pick your poison. And every single defensive coordinator, rightfully so, is going to say, like, we'll give up 5 yards of carry to Joe Mixon as long as we're not beat over the top by Nico Collins and Tank Dell. And that's what happened there. The Bears, at least traditionally last year, played 70% zone of the time. That's normally what they do anyway. Yep. And so in a game in which at home they're favored by almost a touchdown tonight, the Texans, against a defense that primarily plays zone, and that's probably the best way you have to attack this. Like, Mixon should eat today. Just as Mixon's part of the DraftKings same-game parlay tonight. Just FYI, just something to think about.
One other thing on Mixon, when he was at the Bengals were a gap running team. They did that 60% of the time that Joe Mixon was there. Mixon has always been more efficient as a zone runner. I think it's because he's patient and then he's one cut and go. Week 1, for the Texans, they had 26 zone runs for Joe Mixon, 4 gap runs, and he was incredibly efficient. So I don't think of Joe Mixon as like this upside guy because he's been in the league forever. He might actually be an upside guy in this kind of Shanahan type of run zone scheme that Bobby Slowick is running.
We've seen it at least through week 1, and the Bears' rush defense seems to be a favorable matchup for week number 2 as well. Let's spin it now to the Indianapolis Colts going on the road at Green Bay. Both teams 0-1, and what a disparity we have in quarterback play. On paper, preseason, it looked like it was going to be this sexy matchup between Anthony Richardson and Jordan Love. Love out for quite some time. So enter Malik Willis. When it comes to Willis under center, who can you trust in this Green Bay passing offense, Lawrence?
Jaden Reed, probably. That's the only one I would put out there. I'll put him maybe in the flex spot, and that's evidenced by the 33-yard rushing touchdown that he had last week. You got to figure they're going to figure out ways to get him the ball near the line of scrimmage or at the second level and just let him do his thing. That's the only one you could trust it from an efficiency standpoint. Malik Willis can throw the ball downfield, and you do have Christian Watson there who could go deep, but it's not like you just waiting on something.
Two things.
We can't trust anyone is the answer. I think.
Yeah, exactly. Trust is a very strong word. The question was, who can you trust?
I think you can trust Jaden Reed.
Stop it. You
can
can close your eyes, hold your nose, and hope and pray for Jaden Reed.
I'll tell you this. Look.
You just said Malik Willis can throw the ball downfield. You didn't say he can get it anywhere near a receiver.
Well, I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
He's covering his bases.
I've been thinking about this all week, right? The spread is now 2.5 in favor of Indy.
Give me the Colts.
Thank you.
I'm with you on that. But they can win the game. Like, the Green Bay Packers are a good team. If you have a good game plan set up around Malik Willis' skill set, they have a good enough defense. They picked off Jalen Hurts twice. Like, they could win the game, and the spread suggests that. But
what is his skill set?
But by the way, they also didn't stop Saquon Barkley. Jonathan Taylor's going to have a monster game here. Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I got Jonathan Taylor as running back 3 this week.
Exactly.
But again, like, it's a 41 over under here too. I'm just saying, like, I feel like it should be a touchdown spread. That's why I went alt line earlier in the week, but it's not.
Yep, I like that.
I'm just saying.
Colts by 50.
Yeah, exactly. I already took that bet. Give me the 2.5. Like, I'll do it. Unbelievable. The answer's for me, it's Anthony Richardson. Even though Kyler Murray is my ride or die, I have one spot higher. I mean, I have Richardson at 5, Murray at 6. Worth noting, by the way, all my rankings and Lawrence's rankings available at rotoworld.com for free all the time. So go check that out right now if you have a start-sit question for us. To me, a better question for this game, George, would be, is there anyone on the Packers you can trust? And I think the answer here is Josh Jacobs. I've been running back 13. We expect to see the debut of Marshawn Lloyd, so we'll see sort of how the split goes between Marshawn Lloyd and Emmanuel Wilson in terms of the backup role to Josh Jacobs. I think both actually might get work because if you're Matt LaFleur, you're like, I could hand it to one of these backup running backs or Malik Willis could throw. I give it to Emmanuel Wilson. Malik Willis legit might have more rushing attempts than passing attempts in this game as well, because that is one skill set he does have. He is mobile. But give me Josh Jacobs, right? Who last week top 10 among running backs in snap rate. You remember the Colts, 178 yards and a touchdown to Joe Mixon, the aforementioned Joe Mixon as well. You can run on the Colts, and if you're Matt LaFleur, like, that's your only hope here is just like control the clock, run, and then just get there.
There's John.
Taylor
there he
looking
is.
very sharp. Looks like a man
sharp.
who's ready to run for 300 yards.
Which he did a lot of when he played at Wisconsin, back in the Badger State.
Colts by 2.5, Colts by 12.5. Stop it.
So if the Packers is down by 17 or 50, why are they gonna keep running? Here, Josh Jacobs, keep running. We're down 20. Keep running.
You think there's a ceiling?
Like,
how many touches he gets?
At least in the run game. Mm-hmm. So something got to give there.
Listen, all the jokes aside, we all think the Colts are going to win, but the line is 2.5. The Packers do have a good defense. This game is in Lambeau. I don't think the Colts run away with it. I think the Colts win, but I don't think it's 21-0 in the first half or something like that, where I don't think it gets so bad that they abandon the run until maybe the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Fact of the matter is, Josh Jacobs And by the way, one of the things Malik Willis might be able to do is just dump it off to Jacobs, who's a good pass catcher as well. Again, I'm as a top 13 play today. Give me all the Josh Jacobs.
A lot of home dogs this week. Packers one of 6. Almost half the games we're seeing on the NFL slate feature a home dog. Now let's turn our attention to an NFC West matchup. Rams at Cardinals. Speaking of Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, the Birds barely a home favorite. They're -1. The over-under is going to be a high-scoring one at 48. So Marvin Harrison Jr., what happened week number 1? Jay, panic level, where are you at with MHJ?
Somewhat high. I'd say if the panic level is 0 to 10, it'd be like a 7. Not fully out on MHJ. It's 1 week. But you watch the tape of Marvin Harrison Jr. as George Savaricas and I were doing in my office about 40 minutes ago, watching True Media tape of Marvin Harrison Jr. A real great way to light up Sunday morning. He just looked remarkably slow, and the stats back that up. The next-gen stats about his top speed reached one of the lowest that we've seen from any wide receiver in the past 2 years. So that is a concern. But it was just so out of place that I'm kind of willing to buy into the fact that, he can bounce back and there might have just been a niggling injury or something, because he can't be that bad. Because if you watch him at Ohio State, it's not like he is Xavier Worthy, but he's not slow. Like, he's not as slow as he was against Buffalo. So my best guess would be that he was just dealing with a little niggle and he played through it, and hopefully he is better this week, gets a favorable matchup against the Rams. But certainly some concern about Marvin Harrison. We didn't see him at the Combine, didn't see him run the 40, and there were reasons for that, expecting he already knew that he was going to be the top wide receiver off the board. But yeah, there's some red flags.
And you had that stat earlier this week on Fantasy Football Happy Hour where his top speed was less than 17 miles an hour, and that was...
Yeah, but again, Connor talked about this. He's never been a speed guy. He's been an elite route runner with great hands, and he's also somebody that once he gets the ball in his hands, he's good after the catch. But he's never been a guy, like to your point, he's not Xavier Worthy. He's not a guy that's going to just blow past you. That's never been his game. I'm not worried about that, and we'll talk about this a little bit when we get to shot for shot. But if I had drafted Marvin Harrison, I'm starting Marvin Harrison today. We'll get into that. One guy I want to bring up on the other side of the ball, who I think is really interesting, is Demarcus Robinson, just in this game, right? By the way, the Rams' offensive line should be a lot healthier here. You're starting all the obvious guys, right, on both sides of the ball. But Demarcus Robinson, again, no team in the NFL uses 11 personnel more than the Rams. 100% of their snaps. They had 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end against Detroit last week. His last his 5 full games for last season that he played. Rams set a lot of starters in Week 18, but his weeks 13 through 17 of last year, Demarcus Robinson averaged 15.4 fantasy points per game. He had 7 targets last week, which was second on the team. He didn't have the 21 that Cooper Kupp did, but he had 7 targets. He played 92% of the snaps, and so Demarcus Robinson now with an almost 30% target share up for grabs with Puka Nacua out. It suddenly becomes interesting. The last time I looked, Jay, bet I love Demarcus Robinson over under 3.5 receptions on DraftKings. That's way too low.
Yeah, and I think there's this idea that Cooper Kupp is just going to get all of the targets. Like, the other people have to get targets as well.
He's going to get a lot of them.
Yeah, but
21 is a lot.
21 is completely insane. Like, that is very unlikely to be replicated. Maybe it could be because it's Cooper Kupp, but you would expect it to be more in the 12 type of range.
Marvin Harrison Jr. or Monty, this from Eric, PPR League.
Boy.
I would go Marv because tough matchup against the Bucs run defense for David Montgomery.
They're banged up, though.
I'm going David Montgomery.
Yeah, I was just going to say, here's what I will say. I think it depends on what you need. Dave Montgomery is the floor play. Dave Montgomery's getting you 12 points today. Obviously, wide range of outcomes for Marvin Harrison Jr. If you need the upside, I would go with MHJ. If I need the floor, I'm going with Montgomery.
Yep. I would say, if we're starting David Montgomery against the Bucs over Marvin Harrison in a dome against the Rams secondary, then Marvin Harrison's in big trouble.
I don't think the Bucs' run defense is as good as you think it is. My stupid Commanders, who are brutal. Brian Robinson got in. Jaden Daniels had 2. I don't think they're, and that's a team that.
Well,
that's with one of the worst offensive lines in football. This is one of the best offensive lines in football. The game's in Detroit. I think the Lions are going to win this game. I think they'll be up. Montgomery is somebody who is sort of game script independent. They between him and. I think there's a decent chance Montgomery gets into the end zone because there's always a decent chance that Dave Montgomery gets in the end zone. So
each week,
you and I disagree on the strength of the Buccaneers' run defense.
Each week, David Montgomery is the Detroit line who's most likely to get in the end zone every week. It's him.
Yeah.
with all those players on that offense.
That's fine. No respect for Vita Vea. I respect Vita Vea. I'll ride with Vita in this one.
You respect him all the time. He's one guy. Double time. I mean, like.
Well, he takes up two guys. Is the beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's fine. But I mean, Lawrence is absolutely right. The guy with the best odds week in, week out to score a touchdown. If you go to DraftKings and look at anytime touchdowns for the Lions, the guy with the best or worst odds, depending on how you're looking at it, is always Dave Montgomery, right? And so if you're telling me, like, who's most likely to score a touchdown between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Dave Montgomery, it's Dave Montgomery.
Yep.
So that's why I said floor, because I think Dave Montgomery gets you probably, 40 to 50 yards and a touchdown. He gets you 12 points, right? And Marvin Harrison Jr. could be another slow start against the Rams, who are going to shadow a lot of coverage to him, or he could go off, because I do think he has a big game today, but there's more risk with MHJ than there is with Montgomery in terms of the relative floor versus ceiling.
In recent years, if I had said this is the most
You should come attend my class, Understanding Fantasy Football. I'm gonna send you a credit for my master class
Fantasy
that I've just
happy
decided to
hour,
start.
So the most likely AFC Championship matchup recent years has been Bengals and Chiefs. We've seen a lot of them. Cincinnati got off to that horrendous start week number 1. So the Chiefs are favored by 6.5. The over-under, they're thinking this is going to be a high-scoring one as well at 48. Can the Bengals and Joe Burrow get back on track after a rough week number 1? What say you, Matthew?
No,
Yeah, nah.
absolutely not.
Good. Go home, Joe. Don't even bother showing up.
I have Joe Burrow as QB 12 because I think that's based on it's just going to have to be a pure volume play. He's had 4 career games against the Kansas City Chiefs, including the playoffs, and he's averaged 250 yards. He's had at least 250 yards in every single one of them, so there's a floor there. The concerns are there's multitude. So what you're hoping for with Joe Burrow, I think, here is junk time. The wrist is a concern, right? This is not a way to hold a water bottle.
So Matthew holds one.
Yeah, right. But I'm not a pro quarterback, right? I would fade me at Kansas City as well. No T. Higgins today as well. And now they've got to go on obviously Arrowhead, a very tough place to play. The Chiefs have 10 days to prepare for this matchup, right? They opened the season right here on NBC. I'm a company man against the Baltimore Ravens. They've had 10 days to prepare. Meanwhile, the Ravens now haven't traveled to Kansas City. They played last Sunday against the Patriots, and the Chiefs' defense, I think, is as good, if not better, than the Patriots. So, given the fact that Burrow doesn't look 100% healthy, the Bengals traditionally start slow under Zach Taylor. No T. Higgins in this one as well. No, I don't think they get back on track.
Lamar just gave that Kansas City defense everything he had, and they still lost a game. Lamar threw 41 times in that game, right? It took him
ran for over 100.
It took him 40 attempts to throw for 235. So having Joe Burrow without the rushing ability that Lamar has, then you don't have T. Higgins. We haven't yet still seen Joe Burrow play elite for a stretch when he doesn't have both guys in there, and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. And like you said, I think that what matters the most is that the Chiefs' defense is top. This is a top 5 defense.
This is not on Joe Burrow. We love Joe Burrow. Proud Fantasy Life investor Joe Burrow. Love him. Love big Joe Burrow fan over here. But from a fantasy perspective, I think this might be a long day for my friend.
Yep. So in the League of Arseholes, I have 4 quarterbacks, really hoarded quarterbacks.
Because he's an asshole. That's why he's in the league.
He fits right in.
The last one I got in the second last round was Justin Fields because he was just sitting there. And so of the 4 guys I have Justin Fields, Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, and Sam Darnold. Really went kind of bargain hunting a quarterback with the last 3 guys. But Justin Fields, he's the first one I'm starting. He's the last guy. He's the easy one.
Baker, I assume.
Well, I'm weighing up between Baker and Joe Burrow, which isn't where I want it to be. Because I took Joe Burrow in the second round of the Superflex League, but I'm already worried.
Not that I want to help you, but I think the answer is Baker.
How do you bench Baker?
I think that's a shootout tonight. Not tonight, but in Detroit.
Joe Burrow hasn't been good in 2 years. It's not ideal.
I mean, he's on your team.
I know. I thought he was going to be good this year from the start.
I got you right now. Hey, you give me Joe Burrow, I give you Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Done.
What about
2
Deshaun
number
Watson?
1 picks, and his is younger.
I have physically recoil now whenever I hear the words Bryce Young. So I've lost so much money betting on his passing yards over the past
PTSD from week number 1 in that Saints performance. All right, well, let's alleviate a little of your pain.
And if you're desperate, by the way, Andrei Yoshevich did play 100% of the snaps in week 1. He actually was tied for the team lead with 6 targets. We know that Jamar Chase is going to if you have Jamar Chase, you just got to start Jamar Chase. But I do think that Yoshevich, again, like I'm ranked wide receiver 52, but still, but yeah, if you're desperate, there you go. Zach Moss over Chase Brown for me at running back, but neither guy really established themselves last week. All right.
Let's let Jay drown his sorrows, and it is shot-for-shot time.
Yes.
Predictions you feel real confident in, and I love this is when Lawrence gets as specific as possible. Matthew, let's start
Starting
with
me?
you.
All right. Yeah. Zach Charbonnet is a top 12 fantasy running back today. I understand the Patriots defense is good, whatever. Doesn't matter. Ken Walker's not going to play tonight. Charbonnet is a true 3-down back. I believe in this offense. I think he gets into the end zone. I think he's a top 12 play. Give me all. This is not Charbonnet.
I was waiting for something along those lines.
Yeah, this is something stronger than that. But yeah, all right, Zach, top 12 today.
Okay. All right, my shot. The New Orleans Saints. They cover +6.5 against the Dallas Cowboys. The mainstream media, they don't want you to know. The New Orleans Saints are good this year. They're actually good. Defense is good. Offensive line, much better than expected. I think they keep Micah Parsons and co at bay. And they, you know what? They beat the Dallas Cowboys. That's right.
Let's
Cover 6.5 and they beat them outright.
I like that.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, I
Do that.
got Megatron here on my cup, so that's a great sign already. I'm gonna go with Jameis Williams has another repeat performance of at least 106 receiving yards, 1 touchdown there at Ford Field. The Lions versus the Bucs. This is the highest game total of the weekend, fellas, at 51. Last week he played 85% of the snaps. He is no longer a gimmicky wide receiver. He is a real one, and he's doing numbers.
If he goes over 100 for the second straight week, he'll be shot out of a cannon fantasy-wise these first couple weeks. And if you
I like
drafted
that
him
call.
ADP late, you're getting some serious
They're
value
getting that
listen,
man the
I'll-
ball.
with
I
what
don't-
he's looking.
I don't know if he goes 100 yards, but I will say Jameson Williams is legit. I'm with Lawrence here.
My next guy, I don't know if he goes for 100 yards. That's Bo Nix at quarterback because I think he's hot garbage. And TJ Watt and the Steelers are
garbage.
going
Look at
to
the-
tee off and cover -2.5.
Look at the headline. Trash.
It's trash.
George, you
Young
have
man.
to make your proper
mother
shot
and a
today
father.
now. You have to make yours.
George Savaricas is not allowed in the state of Oregon.
Wow.
Absolutely
Or
not.
Colorado.
Right. Well, he might be in Colorado. I don't think they've fallen in love with Bo
Actually,
Nix
maybe,
just yet.
welcomed with a parade.
You know what? I call it like I see it. That was just a disgusting
Dang, one
week
game
number
for
one.
Bo.
I think it's going to
And
be
one-
a
I mean,
painful
like-
week number 2.
I mean,
What about Caleb Williams?
I was just about to say, thank you very much. Like,
Come on,
we're
Bears
talking about rookie quarterbacks that had bad week ones. Bo Nix wasn't his best day, but like Caleb was, dude.
He wasn't good.
Mr. 93.
I'm not quite putting him in the dumpster yet.
Everyone's trash.
Yeah. Bo
Joe
Nix's
Burrow.
fingernails are fine. They're clean.
Oh,
I
boy.
mean, like,
I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Matthew.
Very aggressive.
All right, round 2.
All right, how about, all right, we talked about him a little bit earlier in the show, but I'm going to tell you right now, Marvin Harrison Jr., over 70 yards today, gets back on track, and one stops panicking. He's an elite talent, and believe me, it's kind of a squeaky wheel narrative. Kyler Murray knows if he's going to go anywhere this year, if the Cardinals are going to go anywhere, Marvin Harrison Jr. needs to be involved. Oh, by the way, I think it's a good matchup as well. Rams banged up in the secondary. Give me Marvin Harrison Jr. over 70 yards, and he stops everyone talking about, what's going on with the Cardinals' #1 pick.
Okay. My next shot. Jared Goff wasn't trash, because I don't like to use that word, but he was trash adjacent in week 1. He wasn't good, Jared
Yeah,
Goff. He was not
he was
good on
not
Sunday Night
good.
Football.
He wasn't
I think
good.
he gets back on track. He goes for over 270.5 passing yards against the Bucs. He played the Bucs twice last year. Both times threw the ball 43 times because the Bucs have a good run defense, and Vita Vea is the man. Pass funnel, Jared Goff goes off.
All right. I'm going to go Derrick Henry.
I've heard of him.
King Henry.
King Henry, only 46 yards in week 1, but I'm saying this week against these Raiders who allowed 21 carries, 161 yards, and a touchdown to J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Derrick Henry goes for at least 107 rushing yards and a TD. Look, the Ravens are 8-point favorites here. This is going to be a Derrick Henry game. He might even score 2, but for the shot, we'll go with 1.
It seems like a 25-carry Derrick Henry type
really
game.
does.
They're just going to run away with this one against
Very
the Raiders.
game script dependent, Derrick Henry. and they will be up.
100%. This one, not exactly a shock. Going Chiefs-Bengals here. Patrick Mahomes, with all the weapons that he has this year, I think it's going to be.
Is he trash?
He'd be the opposite.
Oh, got it. Okay.
He'd be excellent.
Just
Is that the dictionary definition? Antonym to trash?
That's the antonym.
Excellent.
Yeah.
right. He's potpourri.
He's potpourri. Yeah.
Fantasy potpourri.
He
Patrick
emits a very
Mahomes.
pleasant odor. With
Yeah.
300 yards, 3 touchdowns, he's going to finish as a top 3 QB. I think for him, facing the Bengals is always a meaningful matchup with the history that recent history these two teams have. So Patrick Mahomes is going to ride this week.
All right. Good. I like that very much. A lot of people like, hey, is George gonna, take a stand? And like you were again, it's great. It's great. So let me write this down. Oh, Patrick Mahomes is good. I'm just gonna give me 1 minute just to.
You either
Make a
good
note
or
of
trash.
that.
It ain't
Yeah.
nothing in between.
No,
You
that's
excellent
right.
or you
Yeah,
trash.
it's just-
I'm
that
not
was helpful.
going,
Mahomes
like
good.
That was
50
that was-
yards and 10 carries type guy.
Yeah, that was helpful to know. Patrick Mahomes is good. I'm gonna just let me move him off my bench into my starting lineup. All right.
Well played.
Good. Thank you very much. Here's another quarterback that I think is going to be good, and I'm chagrined to say it because he's on Jay's team in the League of Assholes, a team that I root against every day.
Slap
but
them like a grape.
Justin Fields, top 10 fantasy quarterback today in his career. In games in which Justin Fields has double-digit rushing attempts, which I think Arthur Smith is going to do absolutely on the road. In games in which Justin Fields has at least 10 rushing attempts, he averages 21.7 fantasy points per game. I think he gets at least 10 rushing attempts in this. There'll be designed runs. I don't think they're worried about, they're not going to be a negative game script, not with that defense, not with TJ Watt breathing down Bo Nix, who is a lovely human being who just struggled in week 1. I'm not like George over here. I think Bo Nix is a very good human being, and I think the jury is still out on his NFL prospects, but I know Justin Fields is going to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback today.
Love that.
Way to take a stance, Matthew.
Okay. My next one. Another member of Slap Them Like a Grape, Jordan Mason. He goes
you
over
got him.
74.5 rushes. That's all right, because I reached for him because I had Christian McCaffrey, who's not doing me any favors. Because I just didn't want to worry about Christian McCaffrey and his
smart.
skimpy little
Hey,
Achilles and
exactly.
his
Smart
soft
of you.
tissue. And so now Jordan Mason is the face and anchor of my team. He's the icon of Slap Them Like a Grape. And he goes over 74.5 rushing yards. McCaffrey last year was consistently set in the 90s for rushing yards.
Yeah.
Jordan Mason should be like 20 yards lower than McCaffrey because I think this offensive line has actually gotten better in the offseason. So Mason, he goes over.
He looked damn
like
good
it.
week 1 against the Jets.
Last one I'm going to go with here. We're going to go back to Joe Burrow. We just talked about him. We talked about the Chiefs' top-tier defense. We talked about T. Higgins being out. So for a second straight week, Joe Burrow will be held to less than 198 passing yards against this top-quality Chiefs defense.
Very specific.
So he might throw for 197, but he ain't throwing for 198. They just, I think they're gonna struggle. Even if the Bengals get behind and get some garbage fantasy points, I still think it's gonna be a struggle. That Chiefs defense on the back end is very stingy.
Take note. That's next level analytics.
You've
there.
talked me
More
into it.
level
I'm starting
analytics.
Mayfield. Burrow's on the bench.
Quick question
do
for
with
me, Lawrence.
Yeah.
How many clicks does it take you to get on Instagram Live?
4 minimum. 4 minimum, because first you got free hands.
Right.
Then you got to pick up your phone.
Yeah.
Then you got to hit the Instagram app.
Uh-huh.
Then you got to hit the little thing for your stories.
Yeah.
Then you got to hit live.
So there's a lot of moves.
Like you're
Before
not
you
just,
get on Instagram Live, it takes some steps.
You know
it's
how
hard to do accidentally.
Like we could butt dial somebody. You ain't butt dialing Instagram Live. Like that's just not gonna happen. So whatever you doing, and it end up on Instagram Live, it was not done by a mistake. Know that.
Yeah. I like the hashtag respect though.
Respect though.
Because
Because you could make some people believe that it was a mistake. So if you can, then I respect you too.
Spin zone.
let's clip that for social.
Yeah, well played. Mine, DJ Moore with Keenan Allen out. Odunze potentially limited. His over-under at 65.5 yards. I think the Bears have to throw it to someone. Caleb Williams, of course, is going to go to his number 1 receiver. So I think DJ Moore is going to hit the over. Bears will be chasing the Texans all night. They're going to be throwing the ball as much as possible.
Trash. Trash, damn it, George.
What say you about this next guy coming in? Ezekiel Elliott and the
you go.
Cowboys.
Hey, he about to get a touchdown today.
I like those. Look at those pants.
What
at
you got?
those.
What? A
Are those
puzzle
sort of
piece?
Saints pants, kind of?
I think so.
Oh, look at this. Look at all these. Look at all the. Oh, my goodness.
no.
All
They're
that,
rushing
for,
in.
all that for a Zeke touchdown.
They're
Get ready
oh
for
my
the home
God.
opener.
Yo, Luke Schoonamaker's starting today. I've got to go watch it. I got to tell my kids where it was.
Welcome back to Fantasy Football Pregame. George Kittle and the Niners on the road this week at the Vikes. Leave it to George to wear, oh, come on, walking right into this one, the corniest shirts, the former Iowa Hawkeye, representing on the road. And that leads us right into the 49ers and their injury concerns, and that was Matthew's headline, Christian McCaffrey, not only out, but on IR. Jordan Addison also out for the Vikings in this matchup. Jordan Love going to miss some extended time. David Njoku, that ankle injury seems to be problematic, Jay, going forward.
Absolutely. David Njoku, who Deshaun Watson would certainly like. He needs all the help that he can get at the moment.
Yeah, some of the other notable names, you got Jaden Reed will be active. Jamison Williams will play for the Lions. Joshua Palmer in for the Chargers.
Yep. Jalen Naylor becomes kind of interesting for deeper leagues for the Vikings. He'll be the number 2 with Addison out.
We got so many injury updates. We had to separate it early games and late games. Hollywood Brown to IR, and it looks like this could be a months-long absence, almost a potentially season-ending type deal for Hollywood Brown. T. Higgins, again out for the second straight week. You got Keenan Allen. Looks more likely that he won't play, whereas Rome Odunze should potentially play. A.J. Brown, questionable going into Monday night. So let's get into our deep league waiver ads. We're going to start with running back. These are running backs available in more than 50% of leagues. And taking a look at some of the notable names. And Matthew, I know you're filing up a tweet right now. Is there a name that jumps off the screen that you think could see the highest volume this week?
This week, yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of guys here, right? I think Jaleel McLaughlin against Pittsburgh. It's so tough. Again, he's their pass catching back. T.J. Watt bearing down on Bo Nix. Like, it's just, again, Jaleel McLaughlin got 5 targets last week. Now he only caught all 5 of them. He caught all 5 receptions. He only had 1 yard. But you know, like, at least the usage was there.
Accuracy from Bo Nix.
I'll mention Alexander Madison as well. Again, almost, you know, significant underdogs on the road at the Ravens. Madison's their passing down back. He should be somebody that gets a lot of passing down work as well. We've talked about this a lot. Tank Bigsby is somebody that looked really good. Now, Doug Peterson obviously came out, and Doug Peterson, I know you mentioned this. Coach Peak Index, our friend Coach Peak Index, gives like a 70% accuracy rating to Doug Peterson. But he said, look, we're going back to ETN. It's kind of our bell cow. I think it'll be a split, and ETN's going to get the passing down work. So if you have ETN, wouldn't worry. But I think Tank Bigsby is going to be a thing. We all agree. Like, to the eye test, Bigsby looked like the better running back here as well. But the other thing that I just want to say here is that list are not only people that you should look at for this week, but also, like, if you have Chris McCaffrey and you don't have Jordan Mason, and you know for the next 4 weeks you're without your number 1 pick and you have a hole at running back, what you have to do is pick some of those guys. Bigsby is certainly one of them. One of those guys that we think is potentially, quote unquote, one injury away, right? I mean, that you think about, you think about Blake Corum, think about Braylon Allen behind Breece Hall with the Jets, Ray Davis in Buffalo behind James Cook, Samaje Perine. Not a great debut, but still, like, if something were to happen to Isaiah Pacheco, Samaje Perine would be the guy. Again, we're never rooting for injury, but it's the NFL and they do happen. And so if I'm a Christian McCaffrey manager without Jordan Mason, and I'm sitting here looking, like, that's what you need to do. You're neither going to try to grab as many of these guys and hope one of them pays off that can get you a couple of weeks. Because the other thing I'll say here is that let's assume he's going to miss 4 more weeks. And let's assume also that you lost last week because you didn't have McCaffrey. I don't think your season's over. I think if you can grind out, you're going to have to play the waiver wire, be smart about it. If you can't even make a trade, go 2-3. Can you get to 2-3 after 5 weeks? Because if you're 2-3 after 5 weeks, you're still in it. You're still in it. I don't want everyone to, I lost Chris McCaffrey, my season's over, because that's not the case. A lot of things are going to happen over the course of the year. Think about the Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams last year. Their guys come into the league. So you're going to take it week to week. Be okay. We're going to grind this out. 2-3. You can do 2-3.
Wow.
That's what I'm going to say.
Al Pacino and Any Given Sunday.
I'm just, right?
It's a tear to my eye.
Peace with inches, peace with 2 and 3.
You fight for that inch.
Yes, you fight for 2 and 3.
Yeah, you fight for 2
claw
and 3.
for 2 and 3.
That's all I'm not saying. Let's not be
There's 2 and
crazy.
3 right in front of your face.
Right in front of your face. Right next
2
to you.
2 and 3 is a good record if you have Christian McCaffrey but no Jordan Mason. I would be happy with that.
Look, and there are leagues where you have Christian McCaffrey and somebody else in your league has Jordan Mason, and the person that has Jordan Mason is crazy. I am like a completely random situation, but perhaps you might be in a league where like a 12-team deep dynasty league, and you have Chris McCaffrey, but you don't have Jordan Mason, and you might offer something, ask what the person wants, like future draft picks or whatever for Jordan Mason, and you might be told, no, the only one I'll take is Amon-Ra St. Brown. And you're like, all right, well, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Again, that's just a random example that I pulled out of nowhere, but that's the kind of thing that I've heard can happen in leagues.
You don't want to name names here?
I don't want to name names.
Well, you get it. We've seen it before. Week 1.
Like, come on. Amon-Ra St. Brown for Jordan Mason. Just stop it. I know. You smartly drafted Jordan Mason along with Chris McCaffrey.
All right. Yeah, not exactly Amon-Ra on this list of deep wide receiver waiver ads. And we've got to look at Brandon Cooks had a pretty solid week 1, 4 for 40 with a tutty. Alan Lazard, is he part of week 1 lies, or is he going to be
he's wide receiver 2 for Aaron Rodgers until Mike Williams gets up to speed. I think Brandon Cooks is very uninspiring as an option, but at the same time, particularly with Jake Ferguson dealing with this injury, Brandon Cooks is the clear number 2 option in a Dallas Cowboys offense for the guy, Dak Prescott, who finished second in MVP last year and plays in a dome.
Let's go to quarterbacks and tight ends now.
One thing I just want to mention about Brandon Cooks very quickly before we move off that screen, I know we already have, but Marshawn Lattimore inactive for the Saints today, which I think helps Cooks. CeeDee Lamb was always going to cook, but they move him around. I thought Lattimore was going to be the one that would be on Cooks the most because he's always on the outside, so I think that's a good sign for Brandon Cooks, again, if you're looking deeper.
We've been hitting on Justin Fields throughout the show. Daniel Jones or Derek Carr all the way at QB 23 this week.
Yeah. But how about Colby Parkinson? No tight end.
Some traction.
No tight end ran more routes than Colby Parkinson in week 1. Again, 29% target share up for grabs with Puka Nacua out. Parkinson's going to be out there all the time. Arizona not particularly tough against tight ends.
Let's get desperate here. These are players available in more than 80% of leagues. Guys in 14, 16, 18 team type leagues. These are the names
You're down
that you're
bad,
going after.
and you're looking to the waiver wire. Right. You're like a fantasy version of George's Bears. You're down bad.
You're dumpster diving.
Yeah.
But you ain't trash.
No, you ain't
Not
trash.
quite.
Trash.
All right, I'm going with the human Dortch, Greg Dortch, who had 8 targets last week. He was targeted on a team high 31% of his routes. I think the Cardinals-Rams game has sneaky shootout potential. Give me Greg Dortch.
Yep. I'm taking Quentin Johnston, friend of the show, Quentin Johnston, who played more than I expected in week 1. Now he gets the Carolina matchup, which is very favorable. And look, every week there is a chance that Quentin Johnston will be the number 1 wide receiver for Justin Herbert, which gives him a little bit of ceiling.
Because of that shootout that Matthew talks about, I'm going to take Michael Wilson, the other Cardinals receiver. You see their ranks similarly here. Mike Wilson did not get 8 targets. He only had 2. He caught 1 for a 5-yard touchdown, but he did play 80% of the snaps, which was second amongst Cardinals wide receivers to Marvin Harrison Jr.
Lawrence, you know what they say? One man's trash is another man's treasure. That's why I got
indeed.
Wan'Dale Robinson, who had 6 receptions for more than 50 yards last week, had 75% of red zone targets, kind of a misleading stat because there was all of 4 total for the Giants, but I think just based on pure target share, Wan'Dale Robinson will be a viable play against that Commander secondary that just got shredded by Baker Mayfield in week number 1. Need help, PPR, Lazard, or Sutton? This from Northland Ginger on YouTube.
Some people are saying, not me, but some people are saying that Cortland Sutton's quarterback is trash, garbage.
Lawrence Jackson.
And not me. I am not one of those people, but some people are saying that, so I'm going to go with Alan Lazard here. I know.
Terrifying.
Yeah, it's if you ask this question before week 1, it's like not even a question. We going with Cortland Sutton.
I am nervous about Bo Nix against that T.J. Watt-led pass.
Oh, you've come to the dark side.
And I don't think he's trash, though. He's a lovely human being.
He can be kind of small animals.
But I will say this. The other thing is Joey Porter Jr. is going to spend a lot of time on Cortland Sutton. Very physical corner. It's a bad matchup for the quarterback. It's a bad matchup for the wide receiver. I do think Lazard, until Mike Williams gets fully up to speed, which is still going to take a few weeks, I do think, Lord help us, it's going to be a thing.
L'Jarius Sneed on Garrett Wilson, too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. You're not worried about. You're still starting Garrett Wilson, but yes, there may be more. There'll be more.
Proper shot time. This brought to you by DraftKings.
I always stand up. Because
It doesn't help you.
No, I know, but at least.
When you sit down,
but
that
at
works
least.
better.
But what happens is that when I throw from my chair, I can't get full, and then I look like Joe Burrow. And
Heaven forbid you should ever look like Joe Burrow.
We looked like Malik Willis week 1.
Pressure's on.
Let's go.
Yeah, it's because you moved right up close.
That's fine. You can do the same thing.
Interception.
Wow.
Interception.
Wow.
So I
You
still got it in one of them.
All right, so
I
there's
had to break the streak.
We know who the Bo Nix of our show is.
If Georgia had made that, the pressure would have been crazy. But here we go, right here. Oh man,
At least you were close.
In and out. In and out.
All right.
That's a good overall week, though.
That is
Good
an overall
overall
good
week.
2
week.
for 4. It's incremental improvement.
We
One
had
for 4
2.5.
last week.
I got the half point right there.
Yeah, you did.
Sure, we'll give you that.
1,000%.
Okay, let's cue it up. We're going to start with Chris Olave. Is this going to be a bounce-back week receiving yards-wise? The over-under at 59.5.
It is. Chris Olave is just clears the talent threshold at which in a dome he can just never be set under 60 yards. So give me the over on Chris Olave. He gets back on track in a game where the Saints will actually have to throw, unlike last week.
Baker Mayfield, keep it going. Passing yards over under 263.5. Pretty high number there, Lawrence.
Yeah, I'm gonna go over here. He threw for 289 in week 1. Game total is 51. Bucks are touchdown dogs, so I'm gonna go with the over here.
Okay, I feel you on that one. Matthew, Travis Etienne just talked about how many rushes he's potentially going to get week number 2 if Doug Peterson's feeding him the ball. Rushing yard prop is at 47.5 this week.
I'm actually going to take the under here. First off, he split carries with Tank Bigsby, right? Under 50% of the running back carries for Etienne. Cleveland, pretty good against running backs, right? Just Cowboys, 3.7 yards per carry last week. Both Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle combined for 66 yards as well. He's been under this number in 5 of his last 7 games dating back to last season. Give me the under 47.5 rushing yards for Travis Etienne. He's going to have to make it up through the air.
They say trends are your friends. We'll see if that holds true for week number 2.
I don't have friends, but that's nice to know the trends are out there, potentially.
You've been banging the Joe Mixon drum each and every day, it seems. His rushing yards.
I wake up in the morning.
Every waking hour. You've been
actually
screaming to
has
the high heavens about Joe
He actually has
Mixon.
a drum, and
Yeah, it's
whatever. He has to steal it from his kids.
So the number is 71.5.
Yeah, this is too low. Here's the thing, is that he's projected for about 18 carries on DraftKings. I think Joe Mixon in this offense is a 4.5 yards per carry guy, so that would imply that he should be set closer to 80 yards. That's where I would put the number, so Joe Mixon goes over 71.5.
How about Matthew Stafford? What he's going to do week number 2 on the road at the Cardinals, 252.5. Look good against the Lions.
Gonna go under with this number. This is why. No Puka Nacua. He's more of their downfield receiver. You saw Cooper Kupp with 21 targets. All those were short dink and dunks there. He's gonna throw a lot. He'll throw a couple touchdowns, but I think he comes just under that 252.5 yards.
Can we trust any receiver with Daniel Jones? That is the question with our next guy and Malik Neighbors at 66.5. Is this going to be the week where he breaks out and looks like the guy who was drafted 6th overall?
I'm taking the over. You had me at Washington. Honestly, he easily led the team in receiving yards last week, and now he gets the Commanders, who gave up 195 receiving yards to wide receivers in week 1. That was the 6th most, and honestly should have been more. So,
how would you describe their secondary?
I would describe their secondary as Bo Nix-esque.
But not trash.
No, they're good human beings. But
Never said Bo Nix isn't a good human being. He
I
can
don't
walk
know.
old
You
ladies
implied
across
that.
the street.
You implied
probably
that.
files his taxes on time.
I think the secondary is overmatched, is what I would say. In pretty much any, if they played a Division III school, okay, maybe. But in the National Football League, they are overmatched in pretty much every matchup.
49ers and Brock Purdy on the road. This number is set at 246.5 against the Vikes.
I think this is a little bit low. Brock Purdy historically has carved up the blitz, expecting he'll get some exotic looks from Brian Flores. Also, week 2, Brandon Ayuk, think he'll be better for the run, so give me the over on Brock Purdy.
Yeah, we saw that drop touchdown from Ayuk.
He doesn't drop it
number
today.
1. Garrett Wilson here with the Jets. Receptions, his line is set at 5.5, Lawrence.
This one was hard for me because he caught 6 passes last week,
right at
so
it.
it's gonna be close. But the fact that he had 11 targets last week lets me know that although Alan Lazard's is BFF, he's still getting the ball to his best receiver. So I'm gonna go slightly over with the Garrett Wilson on 5.5 receptions.
We're going no huddle these last 3. Keep them quick. Derrick Henry rushing yards, 73.5 over under, Jay.
We're going under, just difficult when he's not on the field on 3rd down. Also, I think the Raiders win today against
Okay.
the Raiders.
Matthew, Jamar Chase, receptions over under 6.5.
I'm going to go under. He's been under this number 10 of his last 12 games dating back to last season as well. We've talked about the struggles they'll have. They're going to throw everything at Jamar Chase.
Okay. Lawrence, we got Josh Jacobs rushing yards over under 64.5.
Even if it takes him 31 carries, he's getting this over right here. This is what they got right now. He ran for 84 week 1. We just talked about how Joe Mixon ran crazy over the Colts. I'm going to go over for Josh Jacobs.
Sunday night football game. Caleb Williams for the Bears. His number for passing yards set at 213.5. Matthew.
I'm taking the under, right? I mean, listen, Anthony Richardson, who I think is a better quarterback at this stage of their careers, was under this number in week 1 against weak week 1, despite completing a couple of 50-yard receptions. Guy had 93 passing yards against the Titans on the road, prime time. No, thank you. I'm taking the under on 213.5.
Some cause for concern. Richardson had 3 passes of 50-plus yards week number 1. It was quite the performance. DraftKings Sportsbook, number 1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets instantly, plus get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Download the app and use the promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. We'll be right back. Okay. Sunday Night Football tonight kicks off. Football Night in America at 7 Eastern. You got 2 young phenoms going head-to-head. Caleb Williams and the Bears take their 1-0 record on the road to Houston to take on C.J. Stroud and the Texans, who are also 1-0. You can catch that on NBC and Peacock. Let's get into our QB rankings. And Matthew, you got Anthony Richardson slotted in at number 5 at the Packers, and he had such a big week number 1.
He's played 3 full games in his career, and he's had 20 or more fantasy points in all of them, including last week, to your point. He's had at least 40 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown in every one of those games, something I know Lawrence Jackson is very well aware of. His 16.4 average up the target in week number 1 was unbelievable. 32% of his attempts were actually deep passes. Remember, of course, the Packers gave up 2 deep passing touchdowns in week number 1. He runs and he throws deep. What's not to love about Anthony Richardson?
We'll call out Matthew Stafford here as your QB8, Matthew. This is looking a little worrying, like the 2022 season for the Rams, where they're just decimated by injuries on the offensive line. They were still able to put up decent numbers against Detroit. I think they're in a bit of a better situation than 2022, but this is going to be a good test because the Cardinals don't have a great defense, so you hope that Stafford is able to light them up, but it's going to be interesting to see if he can find options outside of Cooper Kupp to thrive, particularly DeMarcus Robinson and Colby Parkinson.
Options outside of 11 or 1 through 10 as we drop down to 11 through 20, and you see Aaron Rodgers at 20. Matthew, Daniel Jones, and we hear Jay say, I mean, this is kind of like a make or break week for Daniel Jones facing the Commanders this week, and you got him slotted at 16.
Yeah, I do. This is more about how terrible my Commanders defense is than strong confidence in Daniel Jones. But I think this is why Jay is saying it is make or break for Daniel Jones, because people expect him to do well, right? The Commanders gave up 29.7 fantasy points to Baker Mayfield last week, including an almost 10 yards per attempt, 4 touchdown passes. 8 of the last 9 quarterbacks to face the Commanders, dating back to last year, have scored at least 17.5 fantasy points. So again, if Daniel Jones can't do it this week with a healthy Malik Neighbors and a healthy Wan'Dale Robinson and a bad defense, if he can't do it this week, then it might be Drew Lock time. But yeah, I'm thinking he steps up to the occasion because how bad my Commanders are. Daniel Jones comes at a QB 16 for me. Huge news. This is from Michael DeRocco, who covers the Jaguars for ESPN. Jaguars tight end, Evan Ingram.
Suffers a hamstring injury during pregame warmups, out for today's game against the Browns. That's a stunner. We had Trevor Lawrence in your rankings at QB 18, so loses one of his weapons. Luke Farrell next on the depth chart for the Jags at tight end. You wonder how that'll change potential ball distribution in the Jags offense, considering Ingram last year had 90-plus receptions on the season, Lawrence.
Yeah, and I was already worried about Trevor Lawrence coming into this week, but losing Evan Ingram is more of a blow to that. He was quarterback 23 in week 1. This is supposed to be a low-scoring game. You see Dak last week, who he played more good football, regular football than fantasy-wise, as he was quarterback 22 against this Browns defense. They sacked him 3 times. So even with the Cleveland Browns offense playing bad, like, their defense still played good. So for Trevor Lawrence, I would just be weary of all that, and just losing Evan Ingram, that adds to that.
It seems like Trevor Lawrence is going to be so matchup dependent this season.
Might be the last chance as well to get Brian Thomas for Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's in the 25-1 range on DraftKings. I think that he should be closer to half that price. He may very well be Trevor Lawrence's #1 receiving option this season.
He looks great.
I think he is.
Let's turn it over now to running back ranks 1 through 10. Isaiah Pacheco, Matthew, at number 7. Is he just going to be living in the top 10 most of the season?
I don't know how he's not. He's getting a ton of work for one of, if not the best offense in football. 85% of the Chiefs' running back touches in week number 1, played 80% of the snaps. That's higher than in all but one game in 2023. So they're just using him just on all 3 downs. Each of his past games without Jerick McKinnon, this dates back to last season, including the playoffs. In the last 8 games without Jerick McKinnon, obviously McKinnon no longer on the Chiefs, he's not going to play today, he has scored a touchdown in 8 straight games. Cincinnati allows 126 scrimmage yards and a touchdown to Ramondre Stevenson last year, with Jacoby Brissett as the threat behind center. Now they got to deal with Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. Wide running lanes open for Isaiah Pacheco.
I mean, give
He's my running back 7.
Brissett, Ramondre Stevenson combination some respect. They're undefeated this season. A perfect 1-0 out of the gate.
Hashtag respect,
No
though.
no concern, Lawrence, with Jonathan Taylor at number 6 as far as Richardson vulturing.
No, because
red zone
matter of
touchdowns.
fact, a touchdown saved Jonathan Taylor's fantasy day last week. He had trouble running against that Houston defense, but he won't against this Green Bay defense, which gave up 132 total yards to Saquon Barkley last week and 3 touchdowns. I think I should have put Jonathan Taylor as one of my shots, because I think he's game for 2 touchdowns this week. The Texans had 40 minutes time of possession last week against the Colts. That will not be the case against the Green Bay Packers with Malik Willis at quarterback. So I think Jonathan Taylor he could end up as the top running back in fantasy this week.
All right, let's take a peek now at 11 through 20. And Matthew, we got Josh Jacobs, who you think is going to be a heavy feature in this Malik Willis-led Packers offense.
Yeah, because what's their other option? Letting him throw it? Please. look, we've talked about this all show, but like last week, 72% of the snaps for Josh Jacobs in a game in which the Packers were losing, right? I mean, they stuck with it. He got going in the second half. Colts just gave up 178 yards and a touchdown to Joe Mixon in week number 1. I want Josh Jacobs, who I don't think will be game script dependent because he's a good pass catcher and, like he's their best offensive weapon given the state of the Packers offense today. He's my running back 13.
RB16, Travis Etienne, proud member of Slap Them Like a Grape in the League of Arseholes. This is a big day for Travis Etienne just in terms of figuring out what his workload is going to be going forward because it could turn south pretty quickly.
Rashee Rice is my answer here. I don't know if anyone disagrees, but PPR, like, again, we like Jacobs, but just Rashee Rice is going to have an awesome year, man.
Yeah,
and I think
the way
against
he
Cincinnati,
looked week 1, just like, it's Patrick Mahomes, like, you're the guy now. Like, it ain't even Travis Kelce like that. It's like, it's him.
Yeah.
The crown is yours.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of 7 for 80 and a touchdown for Rashee Rice this season.
And that's what we love.
Yeah, in a big way, for sure. Let's get to 21 through 30 now with our running backs. And what a week 1 for J.K. Dobbins. 10 carries, and on those 10 carries, Matthew, 135 yards, was busting loose against the Raiders.
he looked absolutely great. I think he's got to be one of the favorites for comeback player of the year. Lawrence, I don't know if you agree with me. I would ask Jay, but he's bad at that particular prop. Lawrence, comeback player of the year,
Yeah,
Lawrence?
truthfully coming off 2 leg injuries because he didn't really get to get back from the other one. So, yeah, definitely looked pretty good. Not the fastest guy, but he's explosive through the hole. So,
Did you guys see Damar Hamlin led the Bills in tackles
Guess
Thursday
who he was
night?
trying to talk me into before
He's
the show?
35-1. Guy came back from the dead. Let's roll it back, baby.
No.
I would love for you to double down, only to lose it
Wow.
again on Damar Hamlin. Worth noting, look, he split touches to Gus Edwards last week, 52% of the running back carries and just a 12% target share, but I think based on that performance, obviously, he's going to get more. We expect the Chargers to have a lot of success at Carolina. The Panthers gave up 132 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns to running backs in week number 1 in that blowout loss to the Saints. I don't know that anything got better for Carolina here on the road. Harbaugh wants to run normally, but especially in a game in which they should be leading. Bunch of work for J.K. Dobbins. Good chance for him to get into the end zone. 50% success rush rate for J.K. Dobbins compared with just 18% for Gus Edwards. He clearly looked like the better running back between the two.
Lawrence, for David Montgomery, is it going to be rinse and repeat from what we saw week 1?
Yeah, like we spoke about earlier, he's the Lion that is most likely to score a touchdown every week. When you look at the snap count, it's fairly even. He played 30 snaps to Jahmyr Gibbs 31. And if you notice, that game against the Rams, it was a while before Jahmyr Gibbs even got in the game. Like, they started off heavy with David Montgomery, out-carried Gibbs 17-11, finished that up with 91 yards and a touchdown. So, he's ranked in the 20s. I have him ranked in the 20s as well, but he could easily be a top 15, top 12 running back on any given week.
Yeah, he's a very comfortable start as your RB2 or flex spot, depending on the depth of your team and what type of league you're in. On the wide receiver ranks, and this is big news from Tom Pelissero, the Eagles have downgraded A.J. Brown to out for Monday night. Nice of them to share that news a day in advance so people can plan, especially before the start of these 1 o'clock Eastern games. So we
100% agree. So we haven't had a chance to update the rankings here we haven't had enough chance to update the graphics, if you will, on our screen. So A.J. Brown, you see there, he's on the screen, but he is officially out. To your point, George, good that we know prior to lineup lock, so we can officially get A.J. Brown out of our lineups. Devontae Smith moves up to wide receiver 8. So I've got some minions back there updating my ranks while I'm on air. Sent a quick text. Devontae Smith, yeah, you're right. And you should get some minions, Jay. They're terrific.
I just watched them on television.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's a proud NBC Universal.
trying to find
I'm a company man.
Company man.
I've been trying to find me some means, but then I found out you got to pay them, and I ain't trying to do all that.
Yeah, no, understood. Anyway, so updated ranks, you can go to rotoworld.com, check them out for free. But Devontae Smith is now wide receiver 8 for me with A.J. Brown out for the game. And we talked about some of the wide receivers that we think if you're truly desperate, again, you can go to our ranks and see sort of who's the highest ranked guy available in your league. But if you're truly desperate, Greg Dortch, Michael Wilson, Wan'Dale Robinson, who's your guy again?
Zach Ertz.
No, it was not Zach Ertz.
Quinn Johnston.
It was Quentin Johnson.
Default answer for everything.
But anyway, those are
What's your
four
daughter's
wide
name,
receivers.
Jay? Zach Ertz.
Yeah, 4 wide receivers. I really like Dortch. I know you like Wandale Robinson a lot as well, as I do, because again, Commanders. You had me at Commanders.
That's the buzzword for
It really
sure.
is.
So wide receivers 1 through 10, you touched on the shift in the rankings. Jay, for you with Amon-Ra, pretty pedestrian start to the season.
Terrible.
With week 1 against the Rams, and how much of that is going to be predicated on the rise of Jameson Williams?
Yeah, so I'm not worried about Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slightest. I think Jameson Williams certainly had his breakout game in week 1 against the Rams, but the beauty of Amon-Ra is that he plays in the slot. And when you play in the slot, you just have such a high floor. And we didn't see that last week, but I just think he is, again, another guy who's just in the threshold of far too good to fail. His DraftKings prop for receiving is set in the low 80s in terms of yards. He's got a better matchup this week, I think, against the Bucs secondary that has really struggled. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, I still have great confidence that he's going to end the season as a top 5 wide receiver.
Well, and last year he went over 80 yards receiving in every home game. And that's why the prop, once again, is at 80. And it seems like week 1 was such an outlier and should return to more normalcy with Amon-Ra.
It's just a weekend. Like Sam Laporta did nothing as well. Like I think we're going to see a return to normalcy where it's still going to be Amon-Ra 1, Sam Laporta 2, Jameson Williams 3.
I mean, and it's worth noting that the Buccaneers. Amon-Ra had a very nice game against them in the playoffs as well.
Yeah.
Antoine Winfield is not going to play. That secondary is sort of beat up in Tampa Bay. Again. So, yeah.
Speaking of the Buccaneers, as we pivot to 11 through 20, is this Chris Godwin's resurgence here after what we saw a season ago with Mike Evans for the Bucs?
No team gave up more fantasy points to wide receivers in week number 1 than the Detroit Lions. They gave up most catches and the 3rd most yards to the slot. Now, that was Cooper Kupp, who got 21 targets. So, it skewed a little bit. But the fact of the matter is clearly Matthew Stafford saw an ability to target and exploit the slot. Godwin's back to the slot this year. He had a 27% target share in week number 1. He caught all 8 of his targets from Baker Mayfield. So, give me some Chris Godwin as wide receiver 14 this week. I think, like I said, I think there's sneaky shootout potential between this Buccaneers-Lions game.
Expectations for Devontae Adams and the Raiders, Lawrence?
Yeah, I think he'll bounce back definitely from his wide receiver 37 spot in which he finished last week. But the difference between him catching 5 of 6 targets for 59 yards and 0 touchdowns and catching 1, that would have, boosted his ranking for week 1 tremendously. You got the Ravens where the Raiders are 8-point underdogs, so Gardner Minshew's going to have to throw again. So I actually like him as well as Brock Bowers today.
All right, let's keep on trucking down to 21 through 30 now, and we just mentioned Amon-Ra on the Lions. We got Jameson Williams clocking in the 28th spot, Matthew.
Yeah, look, Lawrence talked about him earlier, and I agree with him. Lawrence is a smart guy. Wide receiver 28 for me. He's like an anti-Bo Nix, according to George Savaricas. Lawrence, one of the things I'm sure you were bringing up when you were thinking about Jameson Williams was like he had a 32% target share in week 1.
Yeah.
Right? Played 85% of the snaps. 4 of his 9 targets came on deep passes. His average depth of target over 14 yards. They're targeting him all over the field, but especially deep. Again, I just talked about this. This is going to be a shootout between the Buccaneers and the Lions. Give me some Jameson Williams, who Jay Croucher says Jared Goff should have a big game passing. So there you go. And that'll be part of the reason why.
All right, we got a Twitter question popping up. Jameson Williams the theme here, or Pollard in the flex, half-point PPR, hashtag FF pregame. Appreciate you using the hashtag.
Pollard.
I think it's got to be Pollard. I mean, as much as we like Jameson Williams, and I just talked him up as well. I thought Tony Pollard looked really, really good last week, and I think if we learned one thing last week in watching football, it's that the Jets can't stop the run. You can tell the Jets were going to run. You could literally call out at the line of scrimmage, all right, this is a run, and hand it off, and they still aren't going to be able to stop it. Like, that was awful against Jordan Mason and the San Francisco 49ers. So Tony Pollard, who looks like he's back, he's got that juice. And again, Will Levis struggled a little bit. I think against the Jets, they're going to want to play conservative. Knowing how good that Jets defense is, I think Pollard gets a heavy workload. Give me Tony Pollard today.
I wonder when
Sounds like we all agree.
Hassan Reddick is going to get his payday as he's just sitting on the couch watching his Jets teammates get shredded. We got another question here. This is full PPR Flex pick 2, Charbonnet, Ford, DJ Moore, Jordan Mason, Brian Robinson.
There's a lot of really good choices here, Aiden. Nice job of putting that. For me, Jordan Mason and Charbonnet. I don't know if any of you guys disagree, but you heard me do my shot for shot. I have Charbonnet as a top 12 play, and obviously Jordan Mason is kind of easy.
Yep, I agree with that.
Yeah, it would either be Mason and Charbonnet or Mason and Ford.
Yeah, Ford's the only other one I was noodling on.
But Charbonnet could have the kind of game that Kenneth Walker had last week. Mm-hmm. So I would go Charbonnet as well.
Yeah, there's a chance that Ford gets game scripted out of this, but anyway.
Chris Moss, and the question to the crew here, should I start Likely or Brian Robinson Jr. at flex? This is non-PPR.
Yeah, I get the question, obviously, given how good Isaiah Likely was last week, but I'm going with Brian Robinson. Just guaranteed touches in a game that we expect to be close. The line is 1.5. Robinson was more involved in the passing game last week than I think people expected. Almost a 20% target share for him. He also converted the touchdown. When they get in close and they run the ball, they're going to give it to it. Dan Quinn came out and said, we gave the ball to Jaden Daniels too much. We have to protect him health-wise. We'll see if that actually happens. But my expectation is if they get close against the Giants, and they will, Brian Robinson can get into the end of the day. Look, the Giants do have a good defensive front for sure.
Yeah.
That's a really good defensive front, but Robinson's one of the toughest guys in the NFL. I think he gets it. I think he's got a shot at falling into the end zone today.
It's had more receivers to dig into at 31 through 40, and arguably the ultimate boom or bust receiver a season ago in George Pickens at 33 on the road at the Broncos, and it'll be a second straight week with Justin Fields at quarterback.
Yeah. Look, there seems to be at least somewhat of a connection because he did try to touch it, but to get it to George Pickens. But the concern here is, again, we expect a heavy run. We expect a heavy run game plan here. Patrick Surtain is expected to shadow George Pickens because I guess they're going to take their chances with Ray McLeod and Calvin Austin. Justin Fields' average depth of target in week 1 was 5.6. That was 27th in the NFL. So he's just wide receiver 33 for me. Very scary. Pickens always has a chance to get loose for one, but given the run-heavy nature of the game script, and I think it's going to be a low-scoring game that the Steelers win, hard to trust him outside my top 30.
How about Christian Kirk at 39? And obviously we had that late news with Evan Ingram now
Yeah.
out, the impact that could have with Kirk in the Jags passing game.
Yeah, so I would think Christian Kirk gets some type of small bump now because Evan Ingram, that's huge. You're talking
He's a
about
safety valve.
Yeah, a guy, when you lose a guy who had over 110 receptions last season, that's going to give a guy like Christian Kirk a small bump, but still not crazy about it, mainly because I saw Brian Thomas Jr. take over as the team's wide receiver 1. Gabe Davis is still, so it's still steps he has to climb, but he'll get more of an opportunity. But again, they're playing the Cleveland Browns, who just held CeeDee Lamb to 5 catches for 61. So the first receiver I'd be looking at from the Jaguars is certainly not Christian Kirk.
Yeah, and you've been talking about Brian Thomas and how he could easily be the guy who overshadows Christian Kirk in week number 2 with
Rookie of
both
the year.
those guys.
He looked, unlike a lot of rookies that we saw in week number 1, he looked ready for prime time.
Here's the thing about Brian Thomas. I mentioned this during the week. He got mugged in the end zone by Jalen Ramsey on a 41-yard touchdown throw. If Ramsey doesn't basically commit assault on Brian Robinson in the end zone, that's a touchdown. And then Brian Thomas is 5 for 88 with 2 touchdowns if that is just caught, and we think about him in a whole different light.
Yeah. Again, bad week 1 for Marvin Harrison Jr. Malik Neighbors was fine. You know what
Daniel Jones is his quarterback.
Daniel Jones is his quarterback. Rome Odunze was quiet, but Brian Thomas Jr. and Xavier Worthy, wow. Yep. And A.D. Mitchell is coming, by the way, just in terms of,
They connected on that.
Yeah.
They're gonna connect.
There were 2 touchdown misses where he was wide open, and
their chemistry needs a little bit of work, but
it's close.
you see the speed.
He hit it with the wrong guy. He hit it with Alec Pierce.
That's right.
Supposed to hit it with A.D. Mitchell, but you know what Anthony Richardson was doing? He was saying, look, I'm giving y'all another week to go pick up A.D. Mitchell for free. That's all he was doing. Now it might be too late after today. We'll see.
That stat line was a mirage of 1 reception for 2 yards.
Correct.
A.D. Mitchell. Make sure to hit us up, tweet the show, #FFPregame. We got Deontay Johnson and the Panthers in the building getting ready for their home opener. Hashtag keep pounding,
Keep pounding.
for the Panthers.
Yes, Xavier Legette, a bit of work in
Yeah.
week 1. Bryce Young bounced back day today. I'm not going to predict.
I'm still believing in
you saying
Deontay
it?
Johnson.
Oh, are you really hopping back on the Bryce Young train?
I think
Jay?
Bryce Young will be better today because he cannot physically be worse than he was last week. But look, there was a ton of buzz about Bryce Young in the offseason. He looked great in his one preseason drive. And also here's the thing: is like they were down 2 touchdowns immediately. Like it was a weird game. Like it was just immediately out the door. So look, I don't think Bryce Young is good. I don't think it's going to happen. But I wouldn't completely.
Was it a
write him
weird
off.
game or was it typical?
Well, I mean, 14-0 after like 6 plays or whatever.
Well, it's first
Again,
pass.
I'm asking you. I restate the question, Your Honor. Weird game or typical?
Listen, there's been a lot of market support for the Panthers. They're only 4-point dogs against the Chargers now, which feels about 20 points too generous.
Wait,
for the
did you
Panthers.
say the Raiders was going to win today?
That's right. I think the Raiders. beat
Maybe
the
you should
Baltimore
switch that
Ravens.
to the Panthers because the Raiders is
I don't like
that's
the Panthers.
crazy.
I don't like the Panthers.
You like the Saints? You like a couple of dogs.
I
you
like the Saints
you,
to beat the Cowboys, and I think the Raiders shocked the world and beat Baltimore. Baltimore's defense was not good against
No.
Kansas City. They gave up a lot of
I'll
explosive
tell you
plays.
this about the Ravens. They have 1 or 2 games every single year that they got no business losing. Like they lost to Colts.
Yep.
Giants a couple years ago with Daniel. Like
Just don't be
they
shocked.
have them 1 or 2. I don't think today gonna be that one.
Well, for whatever it's worth, I'll tell you. And I've been talking about Alexander Madison because I think they're gonna be down and they're gonna be throwing. But buddy of mine, my buddy Paul Charchian, saw a video that he did, and he actually had a contrarian view, which I thought was smart. He's just like going on the road to Baltimore. Antonio Pierce is like, screw it. I'm just gonna run Zamir White. I'm going to take the ball out of Gardner Minshew's hands. I'm going to try to keep Lamar Jackson on the sideline, and I'm going to just be stubbornly pounding Zamir White on the road. And again, to your point, Pacheco had no issue running against the Ravens, and so to your point,
I think, to me, the biggest inefficiency.
I don't agree with the call, but I mean it's a ballsy
Well,
call.
it was Gardner Minshew who was on the Colts
Yeah, he beat-
in Baltimore.
won in Baltimore
Big
last year.
game for Zach Moss that day.
Now he's got better weapons with his friends in Vegas. But I just think big inefficiency in the NFL season earlier in the year is we get attached to this idea that last year's defenses that were really good are going to be really good this year. And there's just a huge amount of variability with defense year to year.
Yeah.
Like, we think the Jets defense is going to be awesome. Well, they look terrible in week 1. And you know what? They don't have a run defense and they don't have a pass rush. So why exactly are the Jets, why is that an awesome defense?
By the way,
Baltimore
Niners.
lose Mike McDonald and look really bad against the Chiefs in week 1.
Yeah.
So with week 1, I mean, you take some of the data, and then you also have some of the week 1 lies. So where do we land with Mark Andrews as we're going with tight ends 1 through 10? Was that just an outlier where the Chiefs schemed for him, or will Isaiah Likely's route participation being 70+ as we have 2 Ravens at 4 and 10? Are they going to be a dual-pronged attack for the entirety of the season, Matthew?
I think it'll be a dual-pronged attack, but I'm sticking by Mark Andrews. You see him ranked number 4 for me there on the tight end list. He played 76% of the passing plays in week 1. He ran more routes than Isaiah Likely, faced a ton of double coverage. He has traditionally struggled against Steve Spagnuolo and his defenses over the years. I think against the Raiders, they want to get Mark Andrews going again. Remember, Las Vegas allowed over 15 yards per reception and a 75% catch rate to tight ends in week number 1. Give me Mark Andrews as a top 5 play. Again, you saw on that screen, Evan Ingram ruled out. He suffered a hamstring injury in pregame warmups. He's not going to play. By the way, just also to the Jets defense thing that you just mentioned, DJ Reed's out, by the way.
That's a problem.
Yeah, that is a problem. I mean, you've still got Sauce, but like that's not good for a Jets defense that couldn't stop the run, but at least they can stop the pass, and now at least half the field looks a lot better.
Yep. Big part of that Jets defense last year was Bryce Huff, who was awesome on the edge.
Yes.
They lose him. Hassan Reddick was the replacement. Well, he's not playing now.
Yeah.
DJ Reed out. I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, let's see this Jets defense play at an elite level before we just assume that they're the unit that they were last year.
Right.
So if
this is a must. I mean, again, this is a. I would argue
Must-win week 2?
Honestly, it is. They're 0-1. I believe they play the Chiefs in week 3, right? I mean, like
Falcons play Chiefs in week 3.
Sorry. The Jets have a very tough game in week 3. I forget who they play. Oh, I know. The Thursday game against the Patriots. Okay.
But the Patriots have a good defense. They beat the Bengals.
But my point is if you're 0-2,
Yeah.
do they play the Chiefs in week 4?
You're just really obsessed with this Chiefs. Jets. They play the Broncos, then Vikings. They don't play the Kansas City Chiefs this season.
Then I was wrong on that. But whatever.
I think they might have played the Chiefs in week 3 last year.
You don't want to be 0-2 and having to play a short week with a 40-year-old quarterback against a tough defense. That's all I'm saying.
Titans win today. Titans, Saints, Raiders. Let's roll them up.
Let's
Underdogs.
get nuts.
What's that parlay look like? Let's look at
a
that.
It's got to win you $1 million.
Yeah,
Juicy odds.
I might do that.
Question from Colin.
Titans, New Orleans, and Raiders.
Yeah.
Money line? All right, I'm going to look at that in the commercial break.
Mahomes is good. Hashtag FF pregame in the flex position. Is it worth starting someone like Dallas Goedert or playing a receiver like Wan'Dale Robinson or Deontay Johnson?
I'm still going with Deontay Johnson, guys. Yeah. Just I get it because the Chargers defense is good and Bryce Young looked so brutal, but just volume share. I mean, again, Goddard gets an elevated target share because A.J. Brown is out. But it's also like it's the Saquon and Wan'Dale, like, I mean, Deontay Johnson and Wan'Dale Robinson, two bad quarterbacks. I'm just going with a guaranteed touches with Deontay Johnson. I get the question. To me, it's between Goddard and Deontay Johnson, but I'm
going Johnson.
Yeah, he got a lot of looks last week, and so hopefully the sledding is a little bit easier today against the Chargers.
I'd start Deontay.
You're going, okay. We'll go Deontay across the board.
Yeah.
I could live with that at home. For the Panthers, you're still not you're a little queasy in the stomach having to go between those choices. So if the Raiders shock the world, Jay,
which they will,
what type of game are we going to have to see out of rookie tight end Brock Bowers?
So Brock Bowers has been incredibly undercovered overall. He's a generational prospect, and then the concern coming into the season was his health and whether he was going to be out there. Well, he was out there in week 1. He got 8 targets. He was 6 for 56. I think he's going to be a really big part of this offense. Like, his prop on DraftKings is 32.5 yards. Like, why is it only 32.5? He just got 8 targets. So I think the fact that he's going to get work, I think the fact too that the Ravens defense, it just doesn't look like it's going to be what it was last year. They lost a lot of personnel. They lose Mike McDonald as well. They gave up a lot of explosive plays. And also, think about where the Chiefs dominated them. Middle of the field, Rashee Rice just constantly open. And Brock Bowers, obviously, is a tight end, but I think he's going to work in the same spot. So I like Brock Bowers this week, and I feel pretty confident that he is going to finish as a top 8 tight end this season.
He was my tight end 7. I don't know about everybody else in the world, but he was my tight end 7. But he was a top 5 tight end week 1, right? And of those top 5 tight ends in week 1, he's the only one that did not need a touchdown to do it. So that means you're getting the volume, like you said, 8 targets. I would, like him as well.
Let's go Raiders. Great team to ride.
I ain't saying all that, though.
11 through 20, and these have been some popular pickup options, especially Colby Parkinson Matthew at number 12 for the Rams, who we touched on the show.
We talked about him earlier in the show, exactly. But the fact is that he's going to be the starting tight end for the LA Rams today, in a good matchup against Arizona, right? So, there's a 29% target share up for grabs. We've talked about this. He ran 88. He played 89% of the snaps last week against Detroit, and so with Demarcus Robinson, we like Demarcus Robinson as well, but there's going to be enough volume between Cooper Kupp and just everyone else. Like I just said, basically a 30% target share up for grabs. He's tight end 12 for me in what should be a sneaky shoot against Arizona. The over/under in that game is 48. We expect points to be scored in Rams cards.
Jay, I know Zach Ertz has been on your mind. You got a lot to get off your chest in regards to Zach Ertz at number 14.
Yeah, my 4-year-old slept in my bed last night and kicked me in the head at 4 a.m. Maybe I've got a concussion now where Zach Ertz just comes out of my mouth at all times. But
I get that.
Look, Zach Ertz, he had 4 targets last week, which is not a lot. But no one on the Commanders had more. No one on the Commanders had more. Jane Daniels seemed to have a little bit of rapport. You've spoken about Zach Ertz all offseason, that he's going to be a thing. And I think he will be. He's a safety blanket for a young quarterback.
Yeah, as long as he stays healthy, he's going to be a bigger than he should be part of this Commanders passing offense, because they're still waiting for Luke McCaffrey to come around and Diami Brown, everything like that. And McLaurin obviously is going to draw a lot of attention. So it's weird, but yeah, it's he's going to get some work.
All right, so we got some news with the Cowboys. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones on the pregame show says Luke Schoonmaker is starting in place of Jake Ferguson, who was dinged up last week with that knee injury.
Yep.
So
Ferguson officially out.
Mm-hmm. So he's a big target that has great physical ability. He's got a lot of coordination. He should give them fits out there. So are you going to start Schoonmaker in place of Ferguson? Is this an apples-to-apples replacement?
I am not against the Saints, who are traditionally pretty good against tight ends, especially with Lattimore out. I think this is a CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks game. That tweet from John Machada, who covers the Cowboys, has for a long time.
Yep. If you can find guys like Colby Parkinson, Jawan Johnson, those types on the waiver wire, I'd rather start them over Schoonmaker.
Zach Ertz.
So, Lawrence, if you're spinning the wheel with Saints tight ends, you got Jawan Johnson or Taysom Hill.
I would say it's a hell of a wheel to spin, man. You had Jawan Johnson, who was a top 5 tight end with 2 catches for 26 yards. But he got the touchdown, so he's in there. It's like Kyle Pitts, 26 receiving yards, the tight end position didn't score a lot in week 1. And then you got Taysom Hill, who's 5 carries for 35 yards. Well, if he'd have had that touchdown, then he would have been a top 5, I guess, quote unquote, tight end. That's what they list him as in fantasy. I think it's to the Jawan Johnson and Taysom Hill. They're like, I don't want to say long shots because they're playing the whole game, but more often than not, you need a touchdown out of either one of those for it to pay back and get some value out of that.
It's feast or famine with those guys week to week. So,
for sure.
And we were so close. I said week 1, Terry McLaurin was going to have a monster game. They just missed that 75-yard touchdown connection for Terry. Happy birthday on game day.
Oh, he's scoring today then.
Yeah, come on now.
This is the week against the G-Men.
Are those silk pajamas that he's wearing?
Oh, yeah. He woke up looking fresh.
Hell in.
Let's go, Scary Terry.
All right, let's get the pregame going. Beer goggles time on Fantasy Football Pregame, and this is a segment pretty easy to follow. You go on a scale of 1 to 5 beers. What would it take you to start these players week number 2? We're going to start with the Giants at the Commanders. And Matthew, let's pick it up with Ryan Robinson. How many beers?
1 beer, and honestly, I'm nursing it. I'm not even worried about it. 86% of the team running back carries in week number 1. Remember, the Giants gave up 94 and a score to Aaron Jones last week as well. He actually weirdly had a 17% target share last week, Brian Robinson. That was tied for highest on the team. They're using him more in the passing game. He's always a threat to score a touchdown. You're not really scared about the Giants. There's a chance that Daniel Jones throws a pick or two on his own side of the ball, short field. I'm at running back 21 beer for Brian Robinson.
Daniel Jones, expect the unexpected. On the flip side of the ball, with the Giants offense, Devin Singletary at running back. Jay, what do we got? How many beers?
2 beers. Don't feel great about it, to be honest, but he's Devin Singleton. He's the lead running back for a football team going up against the Washington Commanders, so it has to be 2 beers. It's not inspiring, but I think just through volume, he'll be able to produce.
Terry McLaurin, we just saw, I mean, come on, you got the birthday,
Yeah.
the silk PJs. How many beers for you, Lawrence?
I'll go 3, so that's like it's average. I think him and Jaden Daniels connect on that deep ball this time. We talked earlier about how the Giants' defensive front and front 7 is good. Well, their back end isn't, and Terry McLaurin's going to get a chance to exploit that. So 3 beers for me to start him today.
To a matchup in which 2 offenses didn't exactly excite you in week number 1. That is the Browns at the Jaguars. Matthew, let's have you bat lead off with Christian Kirk. How many brewskis?
I'm going to say 2 beers. Obviously, the Evan Ingram being out improves his opportunities for a lot of the passes in the middle of the field. Having said that, he played less snaps than Gabe Davis or Brian Thomas Jr. in the Week 1 game against Miami. Cleveland pretty good against the slot. 4th fewest yards allowed per game to the slot since the start of last season. Browns allow the 5th lowest catch rate to the slot in week number 1. It's a good defense. Trevor Lawrence's look sort of shaky. 2 beers. 2 beers. You're hoping for volume with Christian Kirk, but certainly week 1 signs weren't encouraging.
So you saw that final score week 1 with the Browns, and you just 10,000-foot view. It's like, the Browns are bad, but actually their defense is good. The offense is just so bad with Cleveland, and it's hard to trust anyone on that side of the ball. But with Brian Thomas Jr. going up against that Browns secondary, how many beers for you, Jay?
Yeah, 2 beers and maybe more like 1.5 now that Evan Ingram has been ruled out. I'm very excited about Brian Thomas. Mentioned that had he not had that touchdown taken away from him by Jalen Ramsey, he would have been 5 for 88 with 2 touchdowns. But still, really tough defense. Still need to see a bit more of a sample before you're fully comfortable. But I do believe he is the most likely player to end up as Trevor Lawrence's #1 option this season.
Okay. On the Browns side, Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I'm going to go 1 beer. If they look just a little better, I'd say 0. But, 2 catches for 16 ain't good, but Cooper still had 9 targets. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill both cleared 100 yards versus the Jaguars last week after a slow start. So it only take me 1 beer this week. I'm still in on Amari Cooper.
Next matchup, Chargers on the road. Jim Harbaugh trying to go 2-0 for the Bolts at the Panthers. Deontay Johnson and the Panthers. How many beers?
2 beers. We talked about this. Again, he got a 20% target share. He got 2 end zone targets last week. Carolina is once again an underdog here. In theory, that should mean more passing. Chargers did allow the 2nd highest catch rate to opposing wide receivers in week 1. Again, they sort of blew out the Raiders, but when Gardner Minshew threw, like he was making completions against them as well. Last week was such, a crazy blowout game. Hopefully in their home opener, the Panthers are able to keep pounding and keep it close enough that, that Bryce Young can get the ball to Deontay Johnson. So,
well played.
2 beers.
Joshua Palmer in. So with that news, the impact it has on the beers needed to start Ladd McConkey this week.
3 beers for Ladd McConkey. I feel like he is going to be the definitional kind of 6 receptions for 45 yards type of guy. And he got into the end zone last week, but I don't think that's going to be the norm. Still 3 beers because there is the lack of upside, I think, but there's also a good chance that he's Justin Herbert's #1 option, which may not mean a great deal in this offense, but still that gives you a certain floor.
Monster week 1 for J.K. Dobbins. But Gus Edwards did have more carries.
Yeah.
So any concern when you go scale of 1 to 5 beers and rolling out J.K. Dobbins?
Gus Edwards could have more carries today, and I would still feel good about J.K. Dobbins. I'm going to go 0 beers against the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to be sober.
You're turning down a beer.
I'm going to be sober like a designated driver. Carolina allowed Alvin Kamara last week to average more than 5 yards a carry in a game for the first time since week 6 in 2022. So Alvin Kamara hasn't done that in almost 2 years. So I like J.K. Dobbins a lot this week.
I'm going to go deep in the archives to find that Kamara nugget. Our last game that we're looking at, the Steelers, 2.5-point favorites on the road to take on the Fighting Bo Nixes and the Broncos in Denver. So with Cortland Sutton, what's the beers that we're
3
feeling?
beers. I'd want to be pretty buzzed, or heading that way at least. Look, we talked about this earlier, but he's going to face shadow coverage from Joey Porter Jr. Last week, Drake London, 2 for 15. seeing against Joey Porter. Broncos have the third lowest implied team total this week. Again, we think this is a low-scoring game. All of our jokes aside, Bo Nix just did not look ready for prime time last week as well. And so, tough matchup, quarterback that's kind of shaky, in a game that should be low-scoring. I think this is kind of an ugly, 17-14 type of game. I want 3 beers. He's my wide receiver 40 this week.
Part that surprised me in week number 1, Javonte Williams, I thought we'd see him on third downs as well. Didn't get a lot of total touches in that game. So how many beers would you need to trot him out in your lineup week 2?
5. Mount on Javonte Williams. So just worry about it. I mean, it helps him that Audric Estime is on IR, so there's one less guy to take work away. But I just think there's going to be a lot of Jaleel McLaughlin today. There's going to be a lot of third downs because they're not going to pick up first downs on the first 2 goes. And I just worry. I'm scared for Bo Nix. I'm scared for him today. He's going to go against TJ Watt. TJ Watt was the best player in football week 1. Now he's going to be teeing off on Bo Nix. I just worry about the Broncos offense in general. Don't want any part of it today.
TJ Watt was so good week 1, he had a referee apologize to him because he timed the snap too perfectly.
Yep.
You
He
don't
should
see
have had
that.
3 sacks and 2 strip sacks, 2
He
taken
was a
away.
madman.
It was ridiculous. Jalen Warren for the Steelers, and he looked, so good as your Batman and Robin last year with Najee Harris, but didn't do much week number 1. Is this going to be a turnaround for week 2?
It doesn't look like it. I'm gonna need 5 beers to start a guy who was 4th on the team in carries in week 1. Like Najee Harris out carries you, fine. Even Justin Fields, fine. But if Cordero Patterson getting more carries than you, I cannot roll with that. I got to see something. I don't know if the hammy still hurt, but if it is, I need 5 beers to throw him in the lineup.
Okay, you guys going 5 heavy there. Jay, the Aussie rules here. That was 12 Fosters that you had to put down in those 4 rounds.
Fosters.
Taking it deep early. Ivan Pace Jr. and the Vikings. You getting behind the overalls? You like?
Wait, what the
You
hell?
like that look?
Ah, man, nah. But hey,
It's
know.
like what?
Wow.
Like Jay walking into the show.
Yeah, right.
That was very
Well,
much
the
what
exact
Jay
same
Yeah,
thing.
that's like you see it at Wisconsin games. They wear the overalls.
He got
Or
like
Badgers.
one pectoral showing.
Yeah.
Like, why not have both on or both straps
know.
off? Like,
Free the nipple.
yeah.
That's the movement he's starting.
Perfect transition to pickup lines
Yeah.
now. And it's our favorite part of the show, brought to you by DraftKings, where someone's trying to take home Matthew at the end of the day, now that he's primed.
Yeah. Well, last week I've had a few beers. I'm feeling
You got your
good.
sweater?
I got my sweater on. It's
Got my
fuzzy.
sweater.
It feels nice to touch.
Yeah.
Last week Lawrence took me home, and it was successful. Anthony Richardson cashed.
Well, and looking back on Jay's pickup line,
Hey, look, I shoot for the stars.
I like that bet though.
you went moonshot with
I
Bryce
don't-
Young.
It's about the process. It's not about the
Yeah.
end result.
But it's a new
I
week.
wasn't mad at it.
It's a new week.
Sometimes in betting, it is about the result.
We'll see.
I mean, ultimately it is.
Ultimately,
And
yeah.
that's why we're going to start with Demarcus Robinson. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Alternate receiving yards, 60-plus receiving yards at plus 210. Now, I know everybody got excited when Tyler Johnson had the 63-yard reception, but he only played 65% of the snaps, whereas to Demarcus Robinson played 92. And get this, we go to weeks 13 through 17 last season, which was the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah.
This guy was wide receiver 12. Meanwhile, Puka Nacua was wide receiver 3. Cooper Kupp was wide receiver 7. And Demarcus Robinson was still a top 12 receiver. Then you look at the fact that they're going against the Cardinals. This is expected to be a high-scoring game. So I think Demarcus Robinson is going to have to be a factor. He's going to have to be their downfield guy if there is a guy for that. So I like him at 60-plus receiving yards alternate line.
Okay, I like that. I think that's a good call. No more shooting for the stars for me. No more plus 750 nonsense. Getting back to meat and potatoes, getting back to the ground,
Right.
literally getting back to the ground. Hashtag keep pounding. Tony Pollard over 50.5 rushing yards. Sorry, why is it 50.5? He had 16 carries last week for 81 yards. He had 4 times Tyjae Spears' carries, 16-4. He's only set a double Tyjae Spears' rushing prop. It's 50 v 25. Did everyone watch the Jets' run defense against San Francisco? They had no prayer whatsoever. So Tony Pollard over 50.5 rushing yards.
Boy.
Really swept off your feet there.
I am. I like both these. I'm actually going to bet both these. I'm going to go with Tony Pollard, though. I mean, the Jets' run defense just looks so absolutely brutal. I agree with you. That line should be higher. I admire shooting for the stars, but it could be a Colby Parkinson game, Kyron Williams, Cooper
Think
Kupp.
about what you're saying, Kobe Parkinson.
Cooper Kupp. I'm going home with Jay. But
It's-
seriously,
sometimes
keep your phone on. I might roll through at
sometimes
midnight on my way back.
Sometimes it's best to not go for the dime piece
I get
and
it.
just get what you can
No,
get.
no,
you
no.
know what I mean?
Like I said, I might be like midnight, 1 a.m. after I leave Jay's. Be like, you up? And
Just no IG
roll
lives.
through. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we
We'll
got
see
bar
how it goes.
trivia coming up next. We had a heated week number 1, 2 tied at the top. Will that change after week 2? Still to come. We got our fantasy football pregame anytime touchdown parlay DraftKings. The number 1 place to bet touchdowns, and here's what we got. Jay has Joe Mixon for the Texans, Lawrence riding the Anthony Richardson train again, Matthew, Derrick Henry. I'm taking Jordan Mason for the Niners now he's the bell cow. The parlay price for those 4 plus $8.88. So if you want to ride with us, that's what we're locking in as our anytime touchdown parlay. All right, last call, bar trivia time, and we had 2 tied at the top of the board. Matthew and Jay were each 8-4-1. Lawrence 7-5-1. After week number 1, we're going 15 questions, 15 rounds. I want a clean fight, guys. Let's get to this. We're going to start with who has more passing yards. Is it Dak Prescott or Derek Carr?
Dak Prescott.
I'm going Dak.
Derek Carr.
Okay, one contrarian here. Who scores more fantasy points, Mike Evans or Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Amon-Ra.
Mike Evans.
Another contrarian. Who has more rushing yards, Josh Jacobs or Jonathan Taylor?
Jonathan Taylor.
I thought you would be different on that. I'm going Taylor.
Taylor.
Okay, we got 35 seconds. Let's rip through these. Receiving yards, Garrett Wilson or Calvin Ridley?
Garrett Wilson.
Wilson.
Total yards, Debo or Justin Jefferson?
Jefferson.
Total yards, Charbonnet or Ramondre?
Charbonnet.
Charbonnet. Yeah.
Receptions, Neighbors or McLaurin?
Terry.
Neighbors.
15 seconds left. We'll do our last one. Passing yards, Herbert or Bryce Young?
Herbert.
Bryce Young.
Okay. There we go.
We got one more.
Well, we got 5 seconds. We're
off
going to
air.
say goodbye. We can
Good
keep
luck in
going
week
if you
one.
want. Have a good week, too.